What's up, everyone? Rose Brown, the accountant therapist here, and welcome to the first live of the season. Right, so every year during tax season, I go live around 7 p.m. to talk about a new tax topic, and it's really geared towards the general public so that folks can better understand taxes, if you will, or really be confident enough to sign off on their own tax return. Okay, with that being said, I am the CEO of Brown's Advisory and Accounting Firm. Where in addition to other services, taxation is one of our primary focuses. That's both for individuals and businesses alike. And I'm going to be talking about a couple of resources today, which you can find through our website at www.brownsfca.com. And of course, you can follow us on social media platforms at brownsaaf.com. Well, Browns AAF, my apologies. And then as for myself, it's at the accountant therapist. So today, really what we're talking about is getting ready for tax season. The last 5 years has been very inconsistent when it comes on to taxes. Between TCJA, the pandemic, the economy switch, just all these different things that has happened has caused us to prepare differently each year, depending on how engaged we may have been in the past, right? So the goal here is to really get ourselves together, making sure that we do it right the first time and we don't have to go back to the table and amend because it does cost more time and money if that's the case. Okay. So the first thing that I want to note as you are heading into tax season, have a plan, especially here if your situation last year or your 2022 activities was complex. If you had a lot going on, you want to have a plan. So that could mean taking inventory of all the things that happened last year. Did you get a second job? Did you get a different job? Did you move out of state, a different state? Did you start a business? Did you acquire rental properties? Did you sell stocks? Right? So there's so many different things that could have happened that you want to make sure that you account for. This way you don't miss anything. Okay. Now, before I mentioned that we do have a couple of resources that you guys can utilize to make sure you kind of get things together, right? So on our website, we do have a checklist where you can just kind of go through and identify the activities that you may have been, a part of. This way, you check it off and you just know to yourself, okay, I should be receiving this particular form or this particular document. This way, you don't go file your tax return before having all these documents, right? Because at the end of the day, with the IRS, any income producing document or form, they already have a copy. They're just waiting for you to reconcile through filing your tax return. So you don't want to say, oh, that W 2, I only made like $500. I don't need to report it. Um, the IRS is waiting for you to report it, right? So we can't just overlook those sorts of things. Okay. Now, with that being said, tax season started yesterday and it actually ends on April 18th. So we have a good window of time to get the taxes done. But what I want you to know is you shouldn't rush, nor should you delay. So when I say you shouldn't rush filing your taxes, you want to make sure that you've gathered all your tax documents, right? We're making sure that we organize things to have it before we file, because yeah, we have some time, but don't delay because we don't have all the time in the world for you to kind of get everything, right? So if you have everything, go ahead, file. If you don't, make sure you get everything before you file, one. And two, if you need more time, don't hesitate to submit an extension with the IRS. This way, you get an additional 6 months to finish preparing and filing your taxes. Okay, so that's going to be crucial. Now, filing early also helps you to avoid any refund delay. Okay, at the start of tax season, that's when a lot more fraud happens than anywhere towards the end. So, filing early can help you to avoid that as well. And with that being said, another thing that I really want you guys to note is the IRS will not call you, they will not email you, they will not text you, nor will they DM you. So what that means is if anybody reaches out through those methods and they say, "Oh, it's the IRS," you can pretty much rest assured that it's not the IRS. The IRS communicates with taxpayers primarily through the mail, and that's the United States Postal Service. Okay. This way you can avoid any fraud and really look out for the elderly, folks who really don't understand taxes, so that they know that if somebody calls them saying that they're from the IRS, it's not the IRS. This way they don't give out their social or, any critical primary information. Okay. Now, if you don't already have an IRS online account, you want to go ahead and make sure that you set up one with them. This way, you can see your historical information with the IRS. If you need to pull a transcript, this is the way that you will go ahead and pull it. If you need to see if you owe them or what the balance is, if you do owe them. In addition to that, if you need a payment arrangement, this is where you would go as well to set it up, right? Set it up through your online account with the IRS. Another thing is, if for some reason you file your return and it's been rejected, and it says that somebody else has used your social security number, you definitely want to get in contact with the IRS ASAP, and that return will need to be paper filed. Okay, so these are some of the things you want to keep in mind. Don't loosely allow others to gain access to your personal information. Again, don't forget our elderly folks out there who needs to be reminded of this. I know sometimes when when folks call saying they're from the IRS, they're very they make you feel frantic, like something is about to happen. So folks who are elderly, they may be a little bit more shaky to the information that they're hearing over the phone, and may be more likely to do what the caller is saying. Okay, so again, let these folks know that this is not how it goes. And if they do receive a letter in the mail, they should reach out to their tax professional so that they're not dealing with it on their own. Okay. All right. So I am going to shift gears now and really talk about more of like an individual impact forms and things you need to keep in mind if you really sit more so on the individual side of things, right? So let's say last year you just had one W-2. It's a simple tax return, no problem. You can even file that return yourself if you wanted to, right? So if it's one W-2, it's a lot less for you to keep track of. Your W-2, you file. But if you had more than one W-2, you want to make sure that you collect all of them before you go and file. In addition to that, if you move states, right? So if you move from California to New York, you want to let your tax professional know so that they can do the correct allocation through your wages. Okay. In addition to that, if you were, say, a freelancer, you're self-employed, you were a part of the gig economy, Uber, Lyft, those sorts of activities, you should be receiving what is referred to as a Form 1099 NEC. Now, you may receive a Form 1099K. Do not overlook that. Provide that as a part of your documentation to your tax professional. Okay. Now, if you sold stocks, and this is huge, guys. If you sold stocks, don't overlook it. If you had some sort of involvement, you're kind of playing around in the stock market, let your tax professional know. In addition to that, you want to be on the lookout for what is referred to as Form 1099B. Form 1099B is a consolidated form that reflects all your activities if you sold through the stock market. Now, and that's really if you sold, because that's what triggers a taxable event. Okay. If you receive dividends, you should be receiving a 1099 DIV. If you receive interest, say from the bank or the credit union, you should be receiving a Form 1099 INT. Now, it's possible that you may not receive these documents until sometime in February, or you can log into your account, your online profile, and retrieve them through the tax document center. But you want to make sure that you have these before you go ahead and file. Okay. And another thing is, and I would say it's $1 million question, if you will. Did you have any involvement with virtual currency? A lot of folks now, they're trying to test it out, see how it works. Oh, I played a game and I got some virtual currency, or I established a Coinbase account and they gave me a couple currency. That's not to be overlooked. You want to make sure that you let your tax professional know once again, within the tax document center on that profile that you have with either of these financial institutions. You want to either get the 2022 summary statement, Form 8949, Or if they do issue a Form 1099-B, you want to also obtain that and make sure that it's a part of your documentations for tax purposes. If your child or your children attended daycare, you want to make sure that you receive that statement. This way, your credits can be accounted for accordingly. Okay. If you had gambling winnings, we do not want to overlook that. You want to make sure that you account for that accordingly. If you had any losses, that as well needs to be accounted for. Okay. If you contributed into a retirement account, your IRA to be more specific, you want to make sure that you have that documentation as well. If you did take a withdrawal from your retirement account, regardless of the type of retirement account, you also want to make sure that you receive that document and you provide it as part of your submission. Okay. If you sold a home or any asset at all, even if you don't get a documentation reflecting that, you want to go ahead and report that accordingly as well. Before I head to the business side, I do want to touch on something to set expectations for a lot of folks. So last year, some folks may have gotten a lot more in refund, and some may have gotten a lot less because of the different stimulus, the advanced child tax credit, the excess child independent care credit, right? So 2023, we're kind of getting back to normal, right? So when we go to file the 2022 tax return this year in 2023, we're kind of getting back to normal. So that advanced child tax credit is no more. We're back down to our regular. The excess child independent care credit is not as much as it used to be. So we're back down to where we used to be, right? So a lot of folks who got a lot more in refund, they're going to come back down. If their refund was a lot less, they should probably get back to their normal refund from back in 2020. Now, as it pertains to stimulus, there were no more stimulus in 2022, so there's nothing to be recorded on the tax return for stimulus. However, if for some reason you were eligible for stimulus in 2021 and 2020, but you never received it, the only way to recoup those is to go ahead and amend those years of tax return. You can't recoup it on the 2022 tax return. Okay. All right. So let's shake things up a little bit and focus on folks who are either self-employed, have a business of any sort. This way, you too can get yourself ready for tax season. Okay. So if you have a side business, literally you could be selling some products, you offer services here and there, or if you were a part of Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, you're just a freelancer, contractor, however you identify yourself as an entrepreneur, this portion here is for you. So the same thing here. We want to go ahead and take inventory for probably the folks that we've worked with, the expenses that we've incurred. This way we begin to organize ourselves, right? So all the income. So that could mean, hey, you receive a 1099 NEC, a 1099 miscellaneous, a 1099K. All these income producing documents that you've received, you want to make sure that you attach it to your documents when you present them for preparation purposes. Okay. Even if there are any income that you've earned that is not a part of those documents, you want to make sure that you go ahead and organize that as well. So going through your bank statements, invoices, if you have those, to make sure that you account for things. If for some reason you are a part of, say, an S corporation or a multi-member LLC or a partnership, you should be receiving what's referred to as a Schedule K1. That Schedule K1 will reflect your share or ownership interest within that company, reflecting the profit or loss or all the other activities that may be going on. So if you're a 50% owner, if you're a 20% owner, your K1, your Schedule K1 will reflect those activities accordingly. What this means is you cannot file your personal income tax return until you receive your Schedule K1. Because if you do, we're back to where we don't want to be, and that's amending your tax return. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have everything. As it pertains to expenses, first, you want to make sure that you actually have them. You've incurred them. This is something that you've purchased. Now, it's not enough that you've made the purchase. You need to be able to substantiate the expense. So what that means is, okay, I paid for something. Do I have the receipt? Do I have the invoice? Right. So anything to show that you've actually paid for this service, that's substantiating the expense. We also need to keep in mind, hey, is this even deductible? Is this a business expense? So that's where you may want to connect with your tax professional, or you can always reach out to us and we can talk through your own individual situation to make sure that we're accounting for things accordingly and just kind of increasing your understanding as a business owner, right? So from that, if you don't have receipts, uh, the bank statement won't be enough depending on the type of expense. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have proof that this actually happened, especially if it's a cash transaction, because if you don't have proof, it pretty much didn't happen and it can cause you to owe a lot more in taxes. Right. So when it comes down to being self-employed, especially if this is your first year, maybe your second year, you'll see if you had a profit, you'll see a higher tax bill that than you've ever experienced probably. So when it comes down to being self-employed, accounting for all your expenses will be critical. Okay. All right. So for folks who may have been driving a whole lot for their self-employed activities, we have our mileage, right? So you want to make sure that either you're keeping track of your mileage, which was a little bit interesting last year, right? Um, the first half of the year, the rate was 58.5, whereas the second half of the year, it was 62.5. So you want to make sure when you go to present these documents, your mileage record, you're reflecting the first half of the year and the second half because the rates are a whole lot different. Or you may decide, you know what, I want to do the actual expenses. So that means you want to keep track of your, what is that, your gas receipts. If you're paying for insurance, your leasing payments, repair maintenance for the vehicle, parking, those sorts of things. Okay. And then the home office, of course, this is one that is often overlooked. But if you are self employed, working from home, this is something you can take advantage of, right? This is not for employees, this is only for self employed individuals. So you want to make sure that you get the square footage of your home office that you use exclusively and regularly just for business. And then, of course, the square footage of the entire home. Okay. So that's the big thing there. Now, when it comes on to really organizing these business activities, it's referred to as bookkeeping. A lot of folks don't even want to hear the word bookkeeping, but that's okay. But you have two options. You can either manually do your bookkeeping as a business owner, or you can obtain an accounting software if you don't already have one. So if this, especially if this is your first year or maybe second, third, and you just haven't gotten around to getting a software, right? So what you want to do is either obtain the software and begin to organize your financials on there, or you can start, say, on a Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets if your situation is not really complex, meaning you're most likely a service business, you don't have that many expenses. That's where a spreadsheet might be helpful for you. Here at our firm, we do tailored spreadsheets where it's really tailored just for you and your business, and it's really detailed so that you can use it to the best of its ability. Okay. And then the final thing that I would note is for all my folks who are uh, landlords, okay? You're in the real estate market and you've rented some properties, okay? You want to make sure that if you have a property management company that's been managing for you, that you receive their summary, because usually they're tracking for everything, of course. So that summary, you want to make sure that you present alongside your other tax documents. If you're doing it yourself, you want to just, of course, go ahead and organize the total rents received throughout the year, the different types of expenses that you may have incurred. So if that was real estate tax, if that was the mortgage interest, if that was the listing fee, right, legal and professional fees, those sorts of things, right? You want to make sure that you keep a record of everything that pretty much represents an expense. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it. I know I talked about a lot of different stuff today, but you want to make sure that you have a plan as you go into tax season. Yes, it started yesterday. We have a little ways to go until April 18th, but you want to make sure that you begin that organization process now before we get to the end of tax season. So again, if you do need additional resources, you can head on over to our website at www.brownsfca.com, where we have tax checklists for both individuals and businesses. You can really use it to check off, hey, does this apply to me? I did sell some stocks. I need to be getting this particular form, right? So there's a lot of good content on that resource through the website. Okay. And I think that's pretty much it for today. It's great to be back. I'm excited for the next couple of weeks to come. And of course, these are live. So if you ever have any questions, you can always put them in the chat. Um, if it's too deep, you can always reach out to us. I always encourage questions. And we do offer free initial consultations just in case we want to kind of talk to your situation and see, where you're at and how can we move forward. Okay. That's all for this week. I will see you next week as I break down a new tax topic. All right. Feel well.